I looked at the portrait for a second too long and felt the hallway change. Not the light, not the air, the sense of time itself tightening like a belt. I lowered my eyes and kept walking, because the 1956 rule in the orientation packet had been very clear. Do not look at the portrait too long. It was underlined twice, like someone had learned it the hard way. I found that packet at 9:42 p.m. on my first night shift, taped inside a leather folder with the closing checklist. Beneath the rule, in lighter ink, someone had added a second warning. If you count the seconds, you will lose them. I did not understand it until I noticed my own handwriting in the margin, small and neat, as if I had already been here before. 6 seconds max. No names, no apologies. Then I glanced up again by accident, and the painted eyes met mine with calm patience, like they had been waiting since 1956 for me to forget. By 9:48 p.m., I was back in the office with the leather folder open on the desk, rereading the rule like it could settle my pulse. Do not look at the portrait too long, underlined twice. If you count the seconds, you will lose them. The second line was written in a different hand, lighter ink, the kind of warning you add when the official one fails. I checked the wall clock above the filing cabinet. 9:48 p.m. I checked my watch. 9:52 p.m. 4 minutes apart. I told myself one of them was wrong. Batteries, drift, nothing worth a thought. Then I noticed the margin note again. My handwriting, 6 seconds max, and the paper beneath it was dented, like the pen had been pressed down hard. I had not pressed that hard tonight. Not yet. At 9:53 p.m., I walked the hallway again with my eyes on the carpet runner, letting the sconces and brass frames stay in my peripheral vision only. The club felt like an old American institution trying to stay polite after dark. Carpet swallowing sound, wood paneling holding warmth, silence maintained by money and habit. The portrait hung exactly where it should, at the turn where the corridor narrowed slightly. I did not look at it. I counted my steps instead and heard the warning echo in my head. If you count the seconds, you will lose them. My throat tightened because I realized counting anything might be the same mistake. When I reached the end of the hall, I stopped and looked back without lifting my eyes. The portrait frame did not creak. It did not move. Yet the air felt as if it had shifted its attention. At 10:01 p.m., I checked the staff sign-in sheet to confirm I had not imagined the time drift. My name was there in my own neat handwriting, the same slant I always used, but the time beside it did not match what I remembered writing. 9:36 p.m. I had arrived at 9:40 p.m. I knew it because I had parked under a meter and checked the ticket. I stared at the sheet until the numbers stopped looking like numbers and started looking like a decision that had been recorded without me. Under my entry, a second line had been added in pencil. Faint but deliberate. Portrait observed. Duration unknown. I had not written that. I had not signed any incident report, yet the page treated it like fact. At 10:07 p.m., the phone on the office desk rang once and stopped. No second ring, no voicemail, just a single sound like a tap on glass. I did not touch it. The leather folder had a section labeled Special Rules, and I flipped to it with a careful slowness. Most were normal, written for staff who did not want surprises. Lock the liquor cabinet. Check the side exit. Do not leave the vault key on the hook. Then, In the same typeface, the portrait rule appeared again, as if it belonged among the mundane. Do not look at the portrait too long. Beneath it was one line I had not seen before, typed smaller, like an addendum. If you break the rule, do not attempt to recover time. Report and proceed. At 10:12 p.m., I went to the hallway and stopped at the corner where the portrait hung. I kept my eyes on the brass frame instead of the painted face, studying details that felt safer than eyes. The plaque beneath the frame listed a name and a date, both too polished to be read quickly. I read only the date, 1956. The paint surface was cracked in places like dried riverbeds, but the eyes looked freshly varnished, too clear for an old painting. I felt the urge to look directly, to confirm that I was not exaggerating. My jaw tightened with it. I remembered the margin note in my handwriting. 6 seconds max. No names, no apologies. It sounded like a ritual someone repeats to keep their mind from slipping. At 10:18 p.m., I tried a controlled glance, the way you test a hot stove with a cautious finger. 1 second. 2. I broke eye contact and looked down. Nothing dramatic happened. No flicker. No sound. That absence made it worse, because it meant the rule was not about immediate punishment. It was about accumulation. I walked back to the office and wrote the time on a sticky note as a check against myself. 10:18 p.m. Then I waited 10 slow breaths and looked up at the wall clock. It read 10:13 p.m. My stomach tightened. 5 minutes missing, not from the building, but from me. The warning line returned with new meaning. If you count the seconds, you will lose them. Counting had not saved me. It had measured the loss. At 10:22 p.m., I searched the file cabinet for anything labeled 1956. The folder I found was thin, nearly empty, like someone had cleaned it out over the years. Inside was one memo on brittle paper, typed in blunt block letters. It described the portrait as if it were a hazard, not art. Exposure creates drift. Drift creates correction. Correction targets the observer. The last sentence was underlined twice, and someone had added a handwritten note beneath it, in the same ink as my margin warning. Do not stare to prove it. Proof is what it wants. My throat tightened because the phrasing felt personal, like the file knew how people think when they are scared. They want confirmation. They want logic. The rule existed to prevent the need for either. At 10:29 p.m., I heard soft footsteps in the hallway outside the office, slow and deliberate, like a man in dress shoes who knows the building. I froze with my pen in my hand. The security camera feed showed an empty corridor. No movement markers, no shadows crossing the runner. The footsteps continued anyway, stopping at the corner near the portrait. Then, very gently, a sound like fabric shifting, the faint brush of a sleeve against frame. My stomach locked because I knew I was alone. I had checked the doors. I had checked the alarm. The only thing in the building with a reason to move without being seen was the rule itself, reaching for a witness. At 10:33 p.m., the footsteps began again, closer this time, and the office air cooled by a degree as if the hallway had opened a window into a different hour. I kept my eyes on the desk and listened. The steps stopped at my office door. There was no knock, no handle turning, just a pause, as if whoever stood outside was waiting for me to look up. Then The leather folder on my desk shifted slightly, the top page sliding a fraction as if a draft had passed, though the vents were off. On the exposed line, my handwriting was there again, but the number had changed. 4 seconds max. My throat tightened. The rule was rewriting itself to match me, and the shorter the number became, the less time I had to stay myself. At 10:36 p.m., I did not look toward the door. I kept my eyes on the page that had changed, because paper felt safer than faces. 4 seconds max. The line sat in my handwriting like a threat delivered in my own voice. I checked the wall clock. 10:36 p.m. I checked my watch. 10:41 p.m. The gap had grown again. I swallowed once and felt the urge to apologize to the empty room, the kind of reflex you have in polite places. The margin rule had said no apologies, and suddenly that made sense. Apologies assume a listener assumes presence. I stayed silent, and the footsteps outside the door softened as if they had leaned closer to hear whether I would offer anything up. At 10:39 p.m., the office phone rang once and stopped, the same single tap sound as before. I did not answer, not because the rule mentioned the phone, but because any sound now felt like it could be counted as proof. I opened the closing checklist and forced myself through normal steps to anchor my hands, lock the cash tins, check the bar cabinets, confirm the side exit. Every mundane line felt like a rope. Then I reached the portrait line again. Do not look at the portrait too long. Report and proceed. Under it, a fresh pencil note had appeared, as if written while I watched. If drift exceeds 5 minutes, do not remain on property alone. The pencil was sharp. The writing was neat. It was not mine. My stomach tightened because it meant the building was adjusting procedures in real time. At 10:44 p.m., I stepped into the hallway and kept my gaze low, scanning the carpet runner for anything out of place. The brass sconces cast warm pools of light, and between them the portrait frame sat like a dark square in my peripheral vision. I felt it the way you feel a person watching you in a quiet room. I did not look up, but my eyes kept trying, pulled by the instinct to confirm what I was afraid of. That was the trap. The file had warned me. Proof is what it wants. I moved past the corner and reached the service door at the end of the hall. The handle was cold. I tested it once. Locked. When I turned back, the hallway behind me looked longer than before, as if the building had stretched a few feet of distance while I was not counting. At 10:49 p.m., I returned to the office and found a new entry on the sign-in sheet beneath my name. It was written in pencil, small and confident. Caretaker acknowledged. Duration unconfirmed. I had never been called caretaker on any schedule. The word made my throat tighten because it implied duty, and duty implied repetition. I flipped the sheet to check if it had been pre-printed on the back. It had not. The pencil had bitten into paper the way someone writes when they want it to stay. Then I noticed the time beside my original entry had changed again. 9:32 p.m. Earlier now, as if the drift was not only stealing minutes from me, but rewriting my arrival to make the building's record match whatever correction it was preparing. At 10:53 p.m., I heard the footsteps again, but this time they came from the office itself. A soft shift behind me, like a chair leg moving on carpet. I froze with my hands on the desk. The security camera feed showed the office from a corner angle. On the screen, the chair behind me was empty. No shadow, no movement marker. Yet I heard fabric settle, the faint whisper of cloth against upholstery, as if someone had sat down with care. My stomach locked. I kept my head forward and focused on the reflection in the dark computer monitor. In the reflection, the office looked unchanged. Then, very slowly, the monitor reflection showed the edge of the portrait frame, even though the portrait was down the hall. At 10:58 p.m., the desk lamp flickered once, not out, just uncertain, and the reflection on the monitor changed. A painted eye appeared in it, crisp and patient, like it had leaned closer to be seen without me turning my head. I did not look directly. I stared at my own hands and kept breathing shallow through my nose. The rule did not only apply to the hallway, it applied to any surface that could carry the portrait's gaze. The building was creating indirect angles on purpose, offering me safer ways to break the rule. That was what made it intelligent. It was not forcing me to stare. It was setting traps for my need to confirm. Proof is what it wants. I felt my watch tighten on my wrist, as if time itself had pulled its strap. At 11:03 p.m., my phone buzzed in my pocket and lit up without sound. A reminder I had never set sat on the screen in plain text. Portrait check. 11:03 p.m. I did not touch the phone. I let the screen go dark on its own. The moment it did, I heard a soft click in the hallway, like a frame hook being tested. Then the footsteps resumed, moving away from my door toward the portrait corner, slow and deliberate, as if the building was resetting the trap and inviting me to follow. The closing checklist's pencil note repeated in my mind. If drift exceeds 5 minutes, do not remain on property alone. I realized the building was giving me an option, and options in this place were never gifts. At 11:07 p.m., I went to the lobby and called the manager from the front desk phone without using names, just like the folder had instructed. I asked for the person on duty. The line rang until voicemail answered with a cheerful greeting that felt wrong at this hour. I hung up without speaking. Behind me, the lobby chandelier dimmed slightly and brightened again, as if the building had noticed the attempt to bring another witness into the night. I returned to the office and found the leather folder open to the portrait rule page, though I had closed it. The margin note had changed again in my handwriting. 3 seconds max. My stomach tightened. The shorter the number became, the less the building trusted my restraint. At 11:12 p.m., I forced myself to write a plan in block letters on a blank sheet. Do not look up. Do not check reflections. Do not seek proof. Leave before drift grows. I wrote each line slowly, as if careful lettering could stabilize my mind. When I finished, the paper under my hand felt colder, like the desk surface had cooled beneath it. I lifted my palm and saw faint pencil marks pressed into the wood grain, as if the desk had been written on before and scrubbed clean. 6 seconds max. No names, no apologies. My own earlier rule, the original one, preserved like a fossil. The building was not only changing the number, it was keeping every version, stacking them like layers of paint. At 11:17 p.m., the office door creaked open by itself a fraction, not swinging, just unsealing enough to show the hallway's warm light. I kept my eyes down, but I could feel the portrait's corner in my peripheral vision. the place where the corridor turned and the frame waited. The footsteps outside my office stopped. Silence held, as if the building wanted me to fill it with one small human reaction. Then, very softly, a voice spoke from the hallway in a tone that matched my own voice so well my stomach dropped. It said my name once, gently, like a reminder. The rule had said no name. The building had said it for me. And the moment it did, the wall clock above the filing cabinet jumped backward by 5 minutes, as if time itself had flinched. At 11:18 p.m., I did not answer the voice. I kept my mouth closed so hard my jaw ached. Hearing my name out loud, in my own tone, felt like someone had taken a key from my pocket and tested it in a lock. The wall clock now read 11:12 p.m. My watch still read 11:17 p.m. Drift. Correction. The old file memo had used those words like weather, like something that simply happens. I stared at the carpet and forced myself to breathe through my nose, shallow, controlled. The hallway stayed still. The office door remained unsealed by an inch. Warm light spilling in like an invitation. I realized the building did not need me to look at the portrait anymore. It could use my name to pull my attention upward. At 11:21 p.m., I backed away from the door and reached for the leather folder again. The portrait rule page felt warm in my hands, as if it had been held recently. Beneath the underlined sentence, a new line had been added in pencil, sharper than the rest. If the portrait uses your name, you are already over the limit. The words tightened my throat because they treated the voice as part of the portrait, not as a separate trick. It meant looking was not the only exposure. Being addressed was exposure. I flipped to the last page of the folder and found a torn section that someone had taped back in place. In the missing space, faint impressions remained, as if a paragraph had been cut out and removed. The building did not only steal seconds, it stole instructions. At 11:26 p.m., the footsteps returned, slow and patient, stopping at the portrait corner. Then I heard the soft brush of fabric against frame again, like a sleeve adjusting a painting that did not need adjusting. The security camera feed still showed an empty corridor. No motion marker, no shadow. Yet the sound continued, careful and deliberate, as if whoever stood there was taking their time. My stomach locked because the sounds were too polite to be random. The club liked politeness. The building liked procedure. A presence that moved like a member, like a committee chair, fit too easily into that world. I kept my eyes down and realized the rule was designed to protect staff from the club's most dangerous habit, standing still and watching. At 11:31 p.m., I heard the frame hook click, then a soft sliding sound, like a painting being shifted a fraction along the wall. Not removed, not stolen, adjusted. The office air cooled slightly. The desk lamp's light seemed to narrow, as if the room itself was squinting. I looked at my phone on the desk without touching it. The screen was dark, but a new notification appeared without sound, centered like a reminder. Portrait check. 11:36 p.m. 5 minutes ahead of my watch. 5 minutes ahead of my body. The building was scheduling my next mistake and giving me a countdown I was not supposed to count. At 11:33 p.m., I stood and decided to leave, because leaving was the only action that did not require proof. The pencil note on the checklist had warned me not to remain alone if drift exceeded 5 minutes. Drift had exceeded 5 minutes twice now. I walked toward the lobby with my gaze low, moving fast enough to feel decisive, slow enough to avoid looking like panic. When I passed the portrait corner, I felt the pull in my eyes again, a gentle insistence to lift my head. I did not. I kept my attention on the brass base of the frame, the edge of the runner, the patterns that were safe. Then I heard my name again, spoken softly from the portrait's direction, in my own voice, followed by one word that made my stomach tighten. Look. At 11:35 p.m., the club lights dimmed and brightened once, as if the building had detected motion even though I had stopped. My breath caught in my throat, and I forced it down, because even a gasp felt like participation. The lobby was ahead, the exit beyond it, safety in streetlight and noise. I reached the front desk and grabbed the phone to call the manager again, but my fingers froze above the keypad. The folder rule had said no names. The building had already used my name. If I spoke it into a phone line now, even to ask for help, would that count as giving it a clean sample? Would it make the portrait more precise? My hand shook once, and I set the receiver down without dialing, anger tightening my jaw because I hated how quickly the building had made silence feel like obedience. At 11:36 p.m., my phone lit up by itself. The notification updated. Portrait check missed. Then a second line appeared beneath it, as if added by an unseen hand. Time correction initiated. My stomach dropped. The wall clock above the lobby entrance jumped backward again, 5 minutes in a smooth motion like a decision. The chandelier light did not change, but my sense of the room shifted, as if my body had been moved to an earlier version of the same night. I looked down at my watch. It still read 11:36 p.m. The drift was no longer random. It was targeted. The file had said, "Correction targets the observer." I was the observer, even when I refused to look. At 11:38 p.m., the front doors were locked from the inside, deadbolt engaged, even though I had not touched it. I tested the handle once. It did not move. The club was holding me on property, the way it held temperature and sound. The leather folder on the front desk was open now, though I had left it in the office. The portrait rule page lay on top, underlined lines staring up at me like a command. Do not look at the portrait too long. Beneath it, in my handwriting, a new number had been written. 2 seconds max. My stomach tightened. The rule was not giving me more room. It was narrowing the margin until any glance would be too long, until the only safe choice was never looking at anything that could reflect it. At 11:41 p.m., the portrait's voice spoke again from down the hallway, closer now, still in my own tone, still gentle. It did not repeat my name. It said something worse. I am right here. The sentence landed like a hand on my shoulder. The lobby air cooled, and I heard that steady ticking begin somewhere behind the walls, slow and exact, like time preparing to be measured. The 1956 note returned in my mind. If you count the seconds, you will lose them. The building was counting for me now. I did not have to count to lose. I only had to exist near the portrait while it decided how much of my night it wanted to keep. At 11:44 p.m., the hallway lights toward the portrait corner brightened slightly, like a stage cue. and the lobby lights dimmed by comparison, drawing my attention in the direction I had been avoiding. The building was guiding my eyes like a hand guides a chin. I kept my gaze on the floor and took one step backward from the hallway entrance. The ticking continued. Then my phone screen updated with a final line, plain and centered, as if it was the only instruction that mattered now. Do not apologize. The rule I had not understood. Apologies assume a listener. A listener assumes a witness. The building did not want me to apologize. It wanted me to look, then beg, then give it proof I was present. I stood in the lobby with my jaw locked and realized the portrait did not need me to stare. It only needed me to break in the smallest human way. At 11:46 p.m., the ticking moved closer, not louder, more distinct, like a metronome brought into the room. The lobby felt narrower, as if the club was folding space toward the portrait corner. I kept my gaze on the carpet and forced my shoulders to relax, because tension is a kind of motion. The leather folder on the front desk slid a fraction of an inch by itself, stopping with the rule page squarely visible. 2 seconds max. The number looked like a verdict written in my own hand. I realized then the building was not trying to trap me into one long stare. It was trying to force a series of tiny glances until 2 seconds became inevitable, until every accidental reflection counted as too long. At 11:49 p.m., the lobby chandelier dimmed and brightened once, and the wall clock above the entrance jumped backward 5 minutes in a smooth, confident motion. The time now read 11:44 p.m. Again, my watch still read 11:49 p.m. The gap widened like a rip. The building was creating loops, giving itself more chances to get what it wanted. The portrait voice spoke softly from down the hall, still in my own tone, still patient. Just look once. 2 seconds. The phrase made my stomach tighten because it sounded like compromise, a bargain offered by something that knew bargains work on tired people. I did not look. I kept my eyes on the brass edge of the front desk and listened to the ticking measure my refusal. At 11:52 p.m., I realized I had one advantage the building did not control: records. If it wanted proof, I could choose what kind. I went behind the desk and pulled the guest sign-in book from the drawer, the thick one members used for events. I opened to a blank page and wrote in block letters, slow and steady: time, loop observed, portrait rule, active, no eye contact, no names, no apologies. I did not sign it. I did not initial it. I wrote only statements, like a report meant for someone else. The ticking hesitated for one beat, as if the building did not like my refusal becoming documentation. Then the portrait voice softened, almost gentle. That does not count. The sentence chilled me, because it meant the building was deciding what kinds of records were official. At 11:55 p.m., the club's security camera monitor on the desk flickered and the hallway feed changed. The corridor view was still empty, but the portrait frame was now centered in the shot as if the camera had pivoted. I knew that camera could not pivot. It was fixed. The feed was being rewritten. The painted eyes were visible on the screen, bright and calm. I did not look directly, but the human instinct to check a screen is hard to break. My gaze flicked for an instant, less than a second, and the ticking stopped. Silence held for a beat, heavy and satisfied. Then the ticking resumed, faster, like a clerk stamping a form. My phone buzzed once. Portrait observed. Duration confirmed. My stomach dropped because it meant even a glance at a camera feed counted as looking. At 11:57 p.m., the wall clock snapped forward 5 minutes as if correcting itself. It now matched my watch for the first time all night, and that brief alignment felt like bait. The portrait voice spoke again, closer now, still without footsteps, still without a body. "Thank you." My throat tightened with the urge to deny it, to say I did not look, to argue the seconds. The rule had warned me about counting. Arguments are counting in another form. I stayed silent. The leather folder page changed again in my handwriting, 1 second max. The number shrinking felt personal, like a punishment and a calibration. The building was adjusting the threshold to match my failure, tightening the rule until I could not avoid breaking it again. At 12:01 a.m., the front doors unlocked by themselves with a soft click. The building was offering me an exit after taking a sample, and that offer felt like another trap. If I left now, would the drift follow me home? Would the portrait use my name in my hallway? The 1956 warning line returned. If you count the seconds, you will lose them. I did not know if leaving was losing or saving. The portrait voice came again, almost friendly. "You can go now." The kindness in it made my stomach lock because it sounded like a host dismissing a guest. The club was not hosting me. It was processing me. I stepped outside into cold air and street noise, and the ticking followed me out like a quiet escort. At 12:06 a.m., I stood under a streetlight in the parking lot and stared at the club's dark windows without lifting my eyes to any reflection. Cars passed on the road. A distant siren rose and faded. Normal sounds should have broken the spell. They did not. My phone lit up with a new reminder, centered and plain. Portrait check, 12:06 a.m. I had left the building. The reminder meant the rule was no longer bound to the hallway. It was bound to me. The ticking kept time somewhere close, not in the air, in my own ears. I put my hands over them, and the ticking continued, because it was not a sound traveling through space. It was a measure traveling with my attention. At 12:10 a.m., I got in my car and drove home without turning on the radio, because voice and sound had started to feel like tools the building could borrow. The highway lights stretched into lines in my peripheral vision. I kept my gaze low, focused on the road markings, refusing to glance at the rearview mirror too long. The portrait rule did not mention mirrors, but the building had already used screens and reflections as traps. At 12:22 a.m., I pulled into my apartment lot and sat with the engine off, listening. The ticking was still there, faint and exact. I realized then it was not counting minutes anymore. It was counting opportunities. Every reflective surface was a chance for the portrait to meet my eyes again. At 12:28 a.m., I opened my apartment door and stepped into a hallway that felt cooler than it should. Not cold, managed. My closet door was cracked open by a fraction, a seam of darkness that did not brighten under the ceiling light. I froze because the darkness looked like the club's corridor seam, the same clean absence. On the wall opposite the closet, my framed family photo hung at eye level, glass catching the hallway light. The picture was normal, but the glass reflection was not. In it, I could see a dark rectangle behind me, at the angle where my closet door opened, as if a frame existed inside the frame. The portrait was not here, but its rules had arrived. At 12:31 a.m., my phone buzzed once and displayed one line, 1 second max. The words were in my handwriting style, the same slant I used without thinking, and that made my stomach tighten more than the darkness did. The ticking accelerated slightly. Eager, I kept my eyes on the carpet and stepped into the apartment without looking at any glass, any screen, any polished surface. The closet seam remained open, breathing cold air into my hallway. I understood then the purpose of the 1956 rule. It was never about protecting staff from a creepy painting. It was about preventing the portrait from moving off the wall and into the observer. I had looked for less than a second. That was enough. Now the rule was no longer in the packet. It was on my skin, in my habits, and the building could tighten it whenever it wanted. I did not sleep. I sat in my living room with every light on, avoiding mirrors, screens, and windows like they were hazards. At 1:18 a.m., the ticking settled into a slow, steady pace, as if satisfied that I had understood the new boundaries of my own home. My phone stayed face down on the table, but it buzzed once every few minutes, the same gentle insistence as a reminder that will not stop until acknowledged. I did not touch it. I wrote on paper instead, block letters on a legal pad. No reflections, no counting, no names. If I needed proof of anything, I would make it on paper, not in glass. The thought calmed me until I noticed my handwriting had begun to change, letters tightening, strokes more precise, like someone else was guiding my wrist. At 1:27 a.m., I checked the legal pad and saw a line I did not remember writing. Portrait observed. Duration confirmed. My stomach tightened because the wording matched the club notification. I had not looked at any portrait since leaving. Then I understood the trap. The portrait did not need to be physically present to be observed. It only needed me to recall it clearly enough, to picture the eyes, to replay the moment my gaze flicked to the security monitor. Memory had become another reflective surface. I pressed my palm against my forehead, trying to block the mental image, and the ticking sped up slightly, like it preferred when I fought. The 1956 warning line made cruel sense now. If you count the seconds, you will lose them. Counting was not only with numbers, it was with attention. At 1:36 a.m., I went to the bathroom and turned on the light without looking at the mirror. I kept my gaze on the sink basin, white porcelain, safe angles. The ticking followed me into the room, faint but exact. I washed my hands longer than necessary, as if the act could scrub off what had been stamped into my habits. When I shut off the faucet, the mirror above the sink began to fog from steam that was not there, a faint haze forming in the center. In the haze, a dark rectangle appeared like the outline of a frame. I did not look into it. I focused on the edge of the counter. Then my phone buzzed from the other room, and the screen lit without sound. Portrait check missed. Time correction initiated. At 1:41 a.m., my microwave clock jumped backward 5 minutes in a smooth motion, just like the club's wall clock had. It now read 1:36 a.m. Again, my watch still read 1:41 a.m. The gap widened in my own kitchen, and that made my stomach lock up. The correction was no longer tied to the club's systems. It had learned my household appliances. It had learned how to make my home behave like an official corridor, adjusting time with the calm authority of procedure. The ticking slowed and steadied, as if the system was satisfied with its reach. Then a new buzz came from my phone, and the message was shorter than the others, like a final instruction. Look up once. At 1:45 a.m., I realized the building had changed its strategy. It no longer needed to trick me with reflections. It could demand a test. Look up once. 1 second max. It felt like the same bargain the portrait voice offered in the club hallway. Just look once. The cruelty was the framing. 1 second sounds safe. 1 second sounds controlled. 1 second is still proof. The file memo had said proof is what it wants. I kept my eyes down and walked to the closet in the hallway, because the seam of darkness there had become the new center of my apartment. The closet door was still cracked open, the darkness inside too dense for the light to fill. The ticking came from that seam now, close enough to feel. At 1:49 a.m., my phone buzzed again, and the text changed, as if the system was impatient. 1 second max. No apologies. My throat tightened with the urge to whisper that I was sorry, to negotiate like a person negotiating with a room. The rule had warned against apologies, because apologies admit you have been seen. I stayed silent. I did the only thing that felt like procedure. I wrote a refusal on the legal pad in block letters and left it on the hallway floor, facing the closet seam, like a document presented to an unseen committee. Refused. Do not reassign time. The ticking stopped for a single beat, and that pause felt like a chair scraping back from a table. At 1:52 a.m., the closet seam widened by a fraction, and cold air pressed out, carrying the faint smell of old varnish and dust, the smell of a room that keeps portraits. The darkness inside was not empty now. It had depth, and within that depth, I sensed a vertical surface, like a wall waiting for a frame. The ticking resumed, faster. My phone screen lit on its own and displayed a new line. Observer present. That sentence made my stomach tighten, because it meant my refusal was still participation. The building did not need me to look up to count me. It only needed me to stand in the right place at the right time. That was how it had worked in the club, turning presence into agreement. At 1:56 a.m., the hallway light dimmed and brightened once, and the air shifted as if the apartment had gained a few inches of space. The closet darkness deepened. Then, from inside that seam, a voice spoke in my own tone, gentle and patient. Just 1 second. I kept my eyes on the floor and felt my stomach lock, because the voice sounded like me on my calm days, the voice I use when I want someone to trust me. The portrait had learned that tone without my permission. It did not need my words. It needed my cadence. If it could speak like me, it could make me look like I consented. I realized then the risk was not only losing time, it was losing authorship of my own decisions. At 2:01 a.m., the ticking stopped completely, and the silence felt like a hand placed over my mouth. The closet seam held open, and the darkness inside looked like a frame waiting to be filled. Then, the most unsettling thing happened. The hallway became too quiet to be normal. No refrigerator hum, no distant plumbing, no street noise. The world outside my apartment seemed to be muted, as if time had been corrected by removing sound from the current minute. My phone buzzed once and displayed a final line, centered and plain. Portrait checked now. The demand felt unavoidable because it was timed to an absence. to a moment when the only thing I could perceive was the pressure to look. At 2:04 a.m., my eyes lifted before I decided to lift them, and that was the true horror. Not a jump scare, not a force, just a reflex pulled tight like a string. I looked at the mirror in the hallway for less than a second and saw a brass frame that was not there an hour ago. It hung in the reflection only, perfectly centered, and inside it, the painted eyes waited, calm and patient, as if no time had passed since 1956. I snapped my gaze down. The ticking resumed immediately, faster, satisfied. My phone displayed one new message in my handwriting style. Observation confirmed. Correction complete. The hallway warmed by a degree. Sound returned, and I understood the trap had worked. It was not trying to frighten me into looking. It was training my body to do it automatically, so it could keep taking minutes without asking. At 2:07 a.m., I wrote the time down in block letters, as if a record could protect me from my own reflexes. 2:07 a.m. Observation confirmed. Correction complete. My hand shook only a little, but the letters came out too neat, too similar to the club's forms. The ticking in my ears felt steadier now, less like a threat and more like a schedule. That was worse. It meant the system had learned how to complete a correction and return the world to normal without me understanding what it took. I stood in the hallway with my eyes on the carpet and realized I had lost minutes again. I did not know how many. The danger was no longer the amount. The danger was that I could not tell what had been taken. By 2:14 a.m., I understood I needed an official place to contain it, the way the club had contained rules in folders and corridors. My apartment was not built for that. It had too many reflective surfaces and too many quiet corners. I drove back to the club, not because I trusted it, but because it was the only place that had been dealing with this since 1956. The parking lot was empty, under pale lights. Inside, the lobby smelled of polish and old fabric, the same polite silence as before. My phone buzzed once and displayed a new reminder. Portrait check. 2:15 a.m. It felt like a meeting time, a time the building had chosen. I kept my eyes down and walked straight to the office, where paper and procedure lived. At 2:18 a.m., the manager was there, as if he had never gone home. He did not ask why I returned. He looked at my face once, and then at my hands, as if checking for a mark I could not see. He opened the safe and removed a thin folder labeled 1956, the paper edges worn soft from handling. He slid it across the desk without speaking. Inside was a single page titled Correction Policy, typed in blunt block letters. It explained the portrait in the language of hazard and procedure. Exposure creates drift. Drift creates correction. Correction targets the observer until observer compliance is confirmed. Beneath that, a handwritten note had been added in pencil. Do not prove you can resist. Prove you can obey. At 2:22 a.m., I asked how to stop it, and the manager shook his head once, small and practiced. He said stopping was not a thing the club had learned. Containing was. The portrait was not a painting in their eyes. It was a mechanism the building had accepted as part of its identity. The only way to keep it from using private homes was to keep corrections on property, in a controlled corridor, with witnesses and records. He told me the club used to rotate caretakers until one of them tried to outsmart the rule by staring for exactly the limit and timing it with a watch. That caretaker lost an hour and never got it back. The manager said the portrait likes precision. Precision is proof. At 2:26 a.m., he led me to a narrow hallway behind the ballroom where a smaller portrait hung under a brass sconce. A different man, different frame, but the same careful realism in the eyes. The manager told me this was the containment portrait, used only for revocation, never for decor. He handed me a sheet of paper and a pencil and pointed to one line at the top. Do not look at the portrait at all. Keep your eyes on the frame. Record the drift when it begins. If drift begins, do not try to recover time. Let the correction complete on property. My stomach tightened because it meant the only safe way forward was to allow loss to happen in the right place. The club had learned to live with losing minutes as long as the minutes stayed in the building. At 2:31 a.m., I stood in that hallway with my eyes on the brass frame edge, refusing the painted face. The manager stayed behind me as witness, close enough to count, far enough to survive if the air changed. The ticking began immediately, slow and exact. My phone buzzed once in my pocket, but I did not touch it. The manager said, "Keep your hands still. Stillness makes the record cleaner." I stared at the frame and wrote the time on the paper. 2:31 a.m. The hallway light dimmed and brightened once, and my stomach tightened because I felt that tightening belt of time again. The correction policy had said exposure creates drift. I had not looked at the eyes, yet the drift was beginning anyway, as if the system could count attention directed anywhere near the portrait. At 2:35 a.m., the wall clock visible through a doorway at the end of the hall jumped backward 5 minutes, smooth and confident. The manager did not flinch. He only nodded once and told me to write it down. I wrote 2:30 a.m., shown on wall clock. Watch reads 2:35 a.m. Drift 5 minutes. My hand shook, but the block letters held. The ticking sped up slightly, satisfied with the measurement. Then the manager leaned in and spoke without using names, his voice low and steady. Do not look up. Do not try to win. Let it finish. His tone was calm, in the way people become calm when they have repeated a ritual for years. The portrait was not threatening us. It was correcting us, and correction was its language. At 2:38 a.m., the air cooled and the hallway felt longer, as if the building had added distance without adding space. The manager said this was the dangerous moment when people panic and try to recover time by seeking proof. He said proof is what it wants. I kept my eyes on the brass frame edge until it blurred. The ticking slowed, then steadied, like a system deciding the correction was complete. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, and I could feel the screen lighting against my thigh, a bright reflection trap I refused to acknowledge. Then the manager told me the last step, the one that made my stomach lock. When the correction ends, you must leave without looking back. The portrait hates being dismissed. At 2:41 a.m., sound returned to normal. The refrigerator hum in the kitchen beyond the hallway came back, distant and familiar. The air warmed by a degree. The ticking faded to a soft background pulse. The manager nodded once, and I understood the correction had completed on property. My hands loosened slightly. Then the pencil in my hand lifted without me intending it. and I wrote a line I had not chosen, small and neat, in my handwriting. Observer, compliant. My stomach dropped because it meant the system was now writing inside me, not just around me. The manager saw the line and closed his eyes briefly, like a man watching a gate shut. He said, "Compliance is not victory. It is admission." Then he told me to go home and do one thing only: remove every portrait. At 2:47 a.m., I drove home with my eyes trained low, avoiding mirrors, screens, any surface that could offer me a frame. In my apartment, I took every framed photo off the walls and turned them face down on the floor. I covered mirrors with towels. I unplugged screens. The measures felt ridiculous until the ticking in my ears softened, as if the system had fewer places to hook my attention. Then my phone buzzed once and displayed a final reminder: centered and plain. Portrait check, 2:48 a.m. I did not have any portraits left hanging. That was the point. The check was no longer about a painting. It was about whether I would look for one, whether I would seek the eyes in any reflective surface, any memory, any empty frame. I stood in my stripped apartment and understood the true rule behind the 1956 rule. Do not look too long was only the first stage. The final stage was needing to look at all. At 2:48 a.m., I stayed perfectly still and did not search for any frame, not on walls, not in glass, not in my own thoughts. The ticking slowed, as if the system was listening for the small movements of attention. My phone buzzed again, one short pulse like a polite reminder, and the screen lit with a new line: check completed. That should have comforted me. It did not. It meant the building had learned a new measurement. It could test my need for proof, the way it tested my glance length. I sat on the floor beside the face-down frames and kept my eyes on the carpet fibers, forcing myself to accept ignorance as safety. Outside, the city made normal sounds: a distant car, a closing door, ordinary life continuing without correction. By 9:22 a.m., I returned to the club, not to work, but to confirm what the manager had said about stages. In daylight, the place looked harmless: polished wood and quiet prestige. The manager met me in the office without greetings. He slid the 1956 folder toward me again and pointed to a paragraph I had missed. Drift is not punishment. Drift is training. The line sat there like an insult. The building was not stealing time out of malice. It was using time as leverage to shape behavior. Beneath the paragraph, a handwritten note in pencil read like a confession: after compliance, the observer begins to supply the portrait. My stomach tightened because it meant the system wanted me to become the frame, the place where the eyes could appear without walls. At 9:41 a.m., the manager showed me a locked cabinet with old orientation packets stacked inside, each one taped and retaped like the memo had been in earlier years. Every packet had the same first rule, the 1956 rule, underlined twice: do not look at the portrait too long. Some packets had additional pencil notes, different numbers, different seconds, as if the limit was personalized over time. He said the portrait did not have one limit. It had a method. It shrank the margin until the observer stopped thinking about seconds and started thinking about permission. He said the club survived by containing corrections in official corridors and by rotating caretakers, so no one person became the permanent supply. He did not say supply like a metaphor. He said it like a resource. He told me the first caretaker in 1956 tried to prove the portrait was harmless by staring until nothing happened. Nothing happened at first. Then his watch drifted. Then his calendar drifted. Then people began correcting him, remembering conversations he never had, blaming him for meetings he never attended. His time became negotiable. The manager said the portrait loves polite institutions because polite institutions already run on correction. Rules, minutes, revisions, approvals. The portrait simply takes that habit and points it at a person. My stomach tightened because I recognized the feeling in myself now, that urge to align, to obey, to fix the gap between clocks. At 9:58 a.m., I asked the manager how they ended it for someone once it followed them home. He said they did not end it. They reassigned it. Containment was a transfer of attention, a careful shifting of who the portrait cared about. He told me the club's worst fear was not a caretaker breaking the rule. It was a caretaker trying to solve it alone and becoming a permanent source. That was why the packets warned no apologies and no names. Apologies and names create personal bonds. Personal bonds create permanence. The portrait does not need a soul. It needs a consistent observer. It needs someone who keeps returning, keeps checking, keeps supplying proof. That afternoon, I made a decision that felt like betrayal and relief at the same time. I resigned. I did it in writing. Clean block letters, no emotional language, no name signatures beyond what was required. The manager read it and did not argue, because he had seen this before. He only asked one question, careful and quiet. "Did you look at the portrait at home?" I shook my head. It was half true. I had not looked at any frame on my wall, but the eyes had appeared anyway, in reflection, in memory, in the corner of my monitor. The manager nodded as if he understood the distinction. He told me leaving the job did not remove the file. It only removed the club's ability to contain it for me. At 11:12 p.m. that night, I sat in a motel room off the interstate, with the curtains closed and every mirror covered. I had driven out of town, thinking distance might help, thinking the portrait belonged to the club. The ticking began anyway, faint and exact, as if it had been waiting for the quiet of a new room. My phone buzzed once. Portrait check. 11:12 p.m. I did not have a portrait. Then I noticed the cheap motel art above the bed, a bland landscape print in a plastic frame. I had not looked at it when I entered. I did not need to. The system had found a frame for me. My stomach tightened because it meant the portrait did not travel as a painting. It traveled as a rule, looking for somewhere to live. At 11:15 p.m., the motel hallway outside my door cooled, and I heard the softest sound of fabric shifting, like a sleeve brushing a frame. The same polite motion I heard in the club. The motel art above the bed did not change, but the glass over it began to show a darker reflection than it should, like an extra rectangle behind my shoulder. I kept my gaze on the carpet and forced myself not to look up. The ticking sped up slightly, eager. My phone displayed one new line, centered and plain, 1 second max. The number had followed me. The margin had followed me. I understood then why the manager said the observer begins to supply the portrait. Wherever I went, my attention would build it. At 11:19 p.m., I did the only thing that felt like a real refusal. I took the motel art off the wall without looking at it and set it face down on the floor. Then I turned every photo frame in my wallet face down on the bedside table. Then I covered the TV screen with a towel. I removed frames the way you remove hooks from a wall, trying to deny the system an anchor. The ticking slowed, considering. Then the room got too quiet, the way my hallway had gotten quiet before I looked. My phone buzzed once and displayed a final line that made my stomach lock. Check now. The demand was not for a painting. It was for my reflex. It was asking whether I would lift my eyes in an empty room just to be sure. At 11:21 p.m., I sat on the edge of the bed with my eyes on my hands and let the moment pass without proving anything. The ticking held steady, then softened, as if the system had been denied the only fuel it truly wanted. My phone screen went dark. Sound returned to normal. The room warmed by a degree, and I understood the final truth of the 1956 rule. Do not look at the portrait too long was never the real instruction. The real instruction was do not look for it at all. In the club, they contained the portrait with folders and corridors. Outside the club, containment was a habit you carried. Every night after that, I slept in rooms without frames and lived without mirrors, not because I believed in a haunted painting, but because I had learned what 1956 really meant. A rule can outlive a building, and it will keep shrinking the margin until your attention is the only thing left to take. The worst part was not the portraits I removed. It was the moment I caught myself scanning blank walls anyway, waiting for a frame that was not there. When the city sleeps, it notices who doesn't.